All right. Can I have a motion to begin our public session? Dr. Pucci Bender, seconded by Ed Hayward. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay. Dr. Pucci Bender, are you able to lead us in a flag salute this evening? Thank you. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Adequate notice of meeting in accordance with PL 1975, Chapter 231. Notice of tonight's meeting was mailed to the Record and the Ridgewood News on January 6, 2026. Notice of this meeting was also mailed to the Borough Clerk and was posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office in the Administration Building on the same date. Mr. Corey, are you able to read our mission statement, please?
Gladly. The Glen Rock School District, founded on principles of education in partnership with a supportive community, provides an exceptional education to all students to cultivate resilient, responsible, and engaged global citizens.
Thank you. So we won't have a student council rep report this meeting, and I'm ready for you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Bendis?
I will be brief because I know we have a long night. So over at the middle school and high school, we just switched over the second semester, so a lot of electives just changed, and was just talking with an art teacher today who was excited about that, and it's just kind of nice to have a fresh new group of students. So great things happened over at the high school this weekend. The musical Freaky Friday was over the weekend. I know I saw Mr. Hayward there on Friday night. I know Mr. Canellis went on Saturday. It was a good show. It was a lot of fun to see. Really appreciate their hard work and the work of all the staff members also and students that put it all together. Robotics team, both of our teams competed on Saturday. They took second and third place. They're advancing to states again, which is great. We're really proud of that team. Just really, really good stuff going on there. On Friday, I got to see the JV girls hockey team, our brand new sport, which was a lot of fun down at the Ice House, see what they're up to, and unfortunate loss 3-4 to Madison, but it was fun to be there and see what was going on. Just real quick on kindergarten registration, opened last week. We are at 92 folks, kindergartners who have registered. Last year at this time it was 99, so we're maybe 7 behind where we were. Just for reference, this year we currently have 171 current kindergartners, so a number will still register between now and then, but we seem to be on track with that. And that's about it. I'm glad to see some warmer weather moving in because it's been quite chilly, but it's been a good winter so far and hope it continues. That is my report.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So tonight we have our annual ethics training. Mark, you're ready?
Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you. Sure. Did you want one?
So, good evening, members of the board, members of the administration, members of the community. My name is Mark Siddemer. I'm the board attorney. Thank you for having me this evening to discuss this important topic, which is the New Jersey School Ethics Act. The New Jersey School Ethics Act is an important law in the state of New Jersey that governs the ethical do's and don'ts for school officials. And I'll talk a little bit later about who is a school official within the meaning of the School Ethics Act. And so I always think that a good place to start this presentation is the preamble, the introduction in the law itself to the School Ethics Act. And it explains why we have this important statute in the first place. And what our legislature has said is that it's in our representative form of government, it's essential that conduct of members of local boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people. Officials have to avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates some justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. What does all this mean? It means essentially that the community has to trust that when you act as members of this Board of Education and as school administrators, you're always acting in the best interests of the students that you're here to serve, and that you're not acting in your own personal interests, the personal interests of family or friends, or for your own business interests, but again, for the best interests of the Glen Rock school community. And I always tell board members, not only do you have to avoid actual conflicts of interest, but you have to also avoid what I like to refer to as the appearance of impropriety. And if there's ever a question about whether somebody's going to reasonably question whether you're acting in your own personal interests or business interests or friends' interests rather than what's in the best interest of the school community, you need to take a step back and make sure that there's no appearance of impropriety, and that what you're doing, I would like to say, passes the smell test. And there's a process for checking to make sure that you're doing the right thing, and certainly here as your board attorney, I'm here to counsel you in that regard, and there's another process that I'll talk about later on as well, where we can go to the School Ethics Commission and get an opinion from them too, before you engage in a particular course of action. So New Jersey code and law says that we're required to annually discuss the Ethics Act at a public meeting, so this will satisfy that legal requirement. So who does the act apply to? I said school officials. Who's a school official within the meaning of the School Ethics Act? Of course, it applies to Board of Education members, but it also applies to the high-level administrators, the superintendent, business administrator, principal, assistant superintendent. It also applies to individuals, officers of the New Jersey School Boards Association as well. Within the Ethics Act, and I've handed it out to everybody tonight, is the Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics within the School Ethics Act only applies to the conduct of Board of Education members. It does not apply to anybody except board members. It does not apply to the administrative team. So essentially, the School Ethics Act is broken down into two parts. We've got what are called the prohibited acts. Those are the sections that deal with conflicts of interest that say board members and other school officials shouldn't act in a manner where they have a direct personal or indirect financial or other type of involvement that could impair their objectivity. And then again, you have the Code of Ethics that only applies to board members. So let's go through briefly, because I know we have a long agenda tonight, some of the various provisions of the Code of Ethics. Section A says board members have to essentially follow the law. You have to uphold the laws and rules that are promulgated for the school district, as well as court orders pertaining to the schools. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Section B says you make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of all children. You're here for everybody, regardless of the student's race, religion, color, sexual orientation, or social standing. You're here to represent all of the students. Section C really defines what it is to be a Board of Education member. You are a policy-making body. So Section C says that you're going to confine your board action to policy-making, setting policy. And as you all know, we use Strauss Esme. They develop our templates for us. But we have the ability to shape those policies to suit the Glen Rock School District. Some policies are legally required. The legislature says we have to have certain policies. The HIB policy is an example of that. And other policies we don't have to have. It's discretionary. And sometimes even within a mandated policy, we have discretion as to how we're going to tailor it to the Glen Rock School District. Just by way of brief example, whether we want to allow homeschooled students to participate on our athletic teams. There's nothing in law that says what you have to do there. That is a policy-making decision that's up to all of you as to how you want to handle that. It says we're supposed to make policy as board members, plan for the future of the district, and appraisal, taking a step back every year and saying, how are we doing? What could we do better? What are some goals that we want to set for the district? That's essentially what Section C means. Section D is an area where board members sometimes get themselves into trouble because they get on the Board of Education and they think they're going to be in the weeds and responsible for the day-to-day administration of the school district, and that is not the case. That's what you have a wonderful administrative team sitting to my right to do. They are responsible for running the day-to-day operation of the school district. The board members don't run the district, but it is your job to make sure that they are well run. Within the code, it talks about what would somebody have to show to prove a violation, for instance, of that section. So somebody would have to show that a board member gave a direct order to school personnel or became directly involved in functions or activities that are the responsibility of school personnel or became involved in the day-to-day administration of the school district. Again, that is not your role. And just by way of a kind of an extreme example, here's an actual case from the School Ethics Commission in 2005 where the SEC, which refers to the School Ethics Commission, found that a board board member violated that provision when during the school day one day, he went to the guidance secretary, started asking her to produce all kinds of SAT reports for him, then decides to head down to the locker room during the school day, tells the phys ed teachers how they should be doing a better job supervising the students and why the locker room wasn't clean to his satisfaction and so on and so forth. Somebody filed an ethics charge and said, "You're administering the schools, that is not your job." And the School Ethics Commission agreed. Section E says your authority rests with the Board of Education, and you're not going to make personal promises or take private action that could compromise the board. So you have the authority to act when you're sitting at this dais. We discuss matters, as you know. We vote on matters. But once you leave this room, you don't have the authority to speak for the Board of Education. You don't have the ability to bind the Board of Education. You shouldn't be doing your own private investigations, and we'll talk about how you're supposed to handle complaints. Again, authority rests with the board, but no one individual board member. Section F says you're supposed to refuse to surrender your independent judgment to special interest groups, partisan political groups, and so forth. We're an apolitical body. We're not a political body. You're not supposed to be using these schools for the benefit of family and friends. Again, I think pretty self-evident, I should say. Section G, they're all super important, but I always like to stress Section G to board members because as board members, you're going to come across a lot of confidential information. You're going to come across a lot of student information that's private, personnel matters, matters of attorney-client privilege, things we discuss in closed session. Your family members are not subject to the Code of Ethics. Your friends are not subject to the Code of Ethics. And I implore you, please make sure that what we discuss in closed session and the administration and the information that the administration gives to you remains confidential at all times. And I truly mean this. I represent a lot of school districts. I think when the board as a whole doesn't trust that confidentiality is maintained and respected by the full Board of Education, it completely undermines your ability to be an effective body. And that's just as blunt as I could be about it. Nobody's going to want to have open and honest dialogue and debate about topics knowing that as soon as that closed session's over, people are running to the community and telling people what was discussed and, oh, please keep it quiet. We know there's no such thing as secrets. So stress to your family members and friends and people that come up to you at the ShopRite and say, hey, you're on the board. Can you tell me what's going on with that situation? Oh, yeah, well, I can tell you, but don't tell anybody. No. The answer is respectfully, I'm a board member. I'm bound by confidentiality, and I can't discuss it. That's the right answer. And it'll be hugely beneficial to the district because, like I said, in the absence of that, it really hinders your ability to be an effective body. The other part of Section G that I want to talk about is accurate information. So we'll talk a little bit later about First Amendment rights and that board members don't surrender their First Amendment rights, but it's very important that when you speak about board issues to community members, that you provide accurate information. So you're allowed to say, hey, I'm voting against the budget because I'm making this up now, but we're adding 2 new administrative positions and I can't support that. That's a fine statement to make. You're entitled to your opinion. But you can't say I'm voting against the budget because I think we're adding 7 new administrative positions. If that's not an accurate statement, that would be an ethics violation. So important that when you talk about Glen Rock issues that you convey accurate information, and that's the other part of Section G. Section H, you will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel after considering the recommendation of the superintendent. So by law, the Board of Education cannot appoint somebody without the recommendation of the superintendent of schools. A board member could not make a motion to appoint somebody, transfer somebody, dismiss somebody without the chief school administrator's recommendation. And there's another section of the New Jersey school law that says the board is not supposed to withhold its approval of the superintendent's recommendations for arbitrary and capricious reasons. Does that mean you have to rubber stamp everything that comes by? No. But you should certainly support it to the extent possible, and unless you're being arbitrary or capricious, you should generally vote yes. Does that mean board members have a right to see the applications and resumes of people that are being considered or recommended, I should say, by the chief school administrator? The answer is yes. The School Ethics Commission says that in order to vote for the best qualified person, board members have a right to information to make that decision. You'd make an appointment. You'd ask the superintendent, can I see the resume of that person that you're recommending for the XYZ position? That is your right as board members. But ultimately, it's going to be the superintendent's decision as to who to recommend, and then the board will give either the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And personnel on a 9-member board requires 5 yes votes, regardless of how many people show up. So a quorum, as you know, is 5 people. We can have a meeting with 5 people, but in that particular case, all 5 people present would need to vote yes, whereas a lot of other actions require a simple majority, which is 3 out of 5 in that particular example. By the way, if I'm going too fast or if you have questions, please just let me know. Okay. Section I says you're supposed to support and protect school personnel in the performance of their duties. This means that we shouldn't be evaluating staff publicly. We should not be discussing staff publicly. To show somebody violated that, the code says somebody would have to show that a board member took deliberate action which resulted in undermining, opposing, compromising, or harming school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. Generally speaking, we discuss employees in closed session. They get a Rice notice. They're informed that we're going to discuss them in closed session, and then it's the employee's option as to whether they want to compel that discussion into public. Section J, I think, is a good section for board members. Section J basically gives you the ability to punt when you're in the local supermarket and a parent comes up to you and says, hey, I know you're on the Board of Education. I've got a complaint. My child's teacher is giving way too much homework, and Dr. Robinson, I want you to handle that for me. Well, the answer to that is thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will refer to the superintendent of schools to handle, and that's the right answer. You're supposed to refer complaints that come to your attention to the superintendent to handle. That's what Section J of the code says. So who can file a complaint if somebody believes that an ethical violation has occurred? What do you think? Who can file a complaint?
Anyone? Anyone?
Anyone. Anybody can file a complaint. Is there a time period by which you have to file a complaint or it's barred? I see some yeses, I see some noes. Dr. Robinson, what do you think?
Yes.
What is the time period? Do you know?
Is it 6 months?
It is a 6-month statute of limitations. So if you don't file it within 6 months, you're forever precluded from filing it. The Board of Education as an entity cannot file a complaint. Individual board members could, but it can't be the Board of Education versus board member John Doe. And again, we talked about that 6-month statute of limitations. So in New Jersey, we have the School Ethics Commission. They're part of the DOE, and they are responsible for administering and enforcing the School Ethics Act. Does anybody know who comprises the School Ethics Commission? Who is this mysterious School Ethics Commission? Who's on it? Does anybody know? How many people are we talking about? What is it? Do they really exist? What do you think? They do exist. Yes, they do. All
It's
right.
appointed.
They're appointed, correct, by...
The Commissioner of Education.
I think I heard it over here. James, you're allowed to participate. The governor, correct. Does anybody know how many members? All right, so there's 9 members. When it's fully, everybody's fully seated. I don't know if it's fully staffed right now, but it's 9 members, 5 community members appointed by the governor, 2 administrators, again, appointed by the governor, and 2 board members actually sit on the School Ethics Commission. They are the entity responsible for adjudicating ethics complaints. And they're the only ones who could determine whether somebody's conduct violated the Ethics Act. Now, I talked a little bit about this before. If there's ever a question about whether a particular board member should engage or an administrator in a particular course of action, you can actually go to the School Ethics Commission and ask their opinion. They will issue an advisory opinion for you. And all of their advisories, by the way, are on their website. Everything I'm going to talk about today is if you go to the School Ethics Commission website, all their decisions are listed there. So you can get an advisory. My recommendation is before we go to the School Ethics Commission and request an advisory, I've read most of the decisions from the School Ethics Commission, so I suggest, come to me first through the board president, and I can generally kind of steer you in the right direction. But in unusual cases, I have actually had to go to the School Ethics Commission. Just by way of a real quick example, I represent a school district where a senior student, 18, got elected to the Board of Education. And the board president called me and said, Mark, can he vote on his teachers? Can he vote on his classmates? And I scratched my head and I said, this is a good example of a case that we should go to the School Ethics Commission and get an advisory. And they issued a very nice decision for us, kind of telling us the do's and don'ts about what that particular board member student could do. He turned out to be an excellent board member, by the way. Really, really good. What are the sanctions? What are the penalties if somebody violates the School Ethics Act? What do you think? So at the, go ahead.
I was going to say it depends.
It does depend, that's exactly right. So at the light end of the spectrum, you got a...
Censure or
You're close.
a letter of reprimand.
Yep, so exactly. So the lightest penalty is a reprimand. That's kind of a slap on the wrist. You get a letter from the School Ethics Commission saying you shouldn't have done that. Be more careful next time. A censure is a resolution that we have to read aloud at a public meeting saying the board member violated the Ethics Act. It's embarrassing. We have to post it where we post notices for our meetings and all that. It's not a good look, obviously. And then you have suspensions, which is removal from the board for a certain period of time. And then lastly, in the most extreme cases, you have removal. I want to talk briefly about indemnification. Now, this is outside, this is not in the School Ethics Act itself. It's part of Title 18A, which is the school laws that govern schools in the state of New Jersey. But under 18A, board members are entitled to be indemnified if a complaint is brought against them for something arising out of the course of their performance in the course of the performance of their duties as board members. So what that means is if an ethics case were to be filed against a Board of Education member, the Board of Education has to cover their defense. And the legislature, and I think correctly so, thought, why would anybody ever want to get on a Board of Education if they could be sued, or if somebody could file an ethics case and they have to go hire their own lawyer out of their own pocket? Nobody would ever volunteer like you folks do. So what the law says is you'd be entitled to indemnification. I think we generally cover insurance for those sorts of things. So, I do want you to rest your head on your pillow at night, calmly, because if something like this were to happen, if somebody did file an ethics complaint, the board would, allow you to retain counsel, and the board would ultimately be responsible for covering your costs. And that's even if you're found to have violated the Ethics Act, believe it or not. So if the allegation is you voted on something where you had a conflict of interest, you might say, Mark, well, that didn't arise out of the course of that person's duties as a board member, because you're not supposed to vote on matters where you have a conflict of interest. The standard isn't whether you're innocent or guilty. The standard is whether it's something that you did during your duties as a board member, whether you are right or whether you are wrong. The only time that winning or losing, so to speak, matters is in criminal indemnification. So in other words, if somebody filed a criminal complaint, you'd have to be acquitted in order for indemnification to kick in. For any other case, the standard is, did it happen as a board member? Does anybody have any questions about indemnification?
And that doesn't require that the allegation is like egregious or anything like that, as long as it
No,
occurred.
the standard is, did it arise out of the course of the performance of your duties as a board member? The only thing in the Code of Ethics that I think arguably wouldn't fit into that is if the allegation was that a board member took private action. I talked before about taking private action that could compromise the board. Perhaps an argument could be made if an ethics complaint was filed against a board member saying you took private action. Then the question is, well, did that really arise out of the course of their performance as board members? If it was private action, something they did outside the scope of their duties, that's something we would have to look at very, very carefully to determine whether indemnification would kick in. Okay, do board members surrender their First Amendment rights by being on the Board of Education? Of course not. You have First Amendment rights. You have a right to speak on issues involving the district that are important to you, but there's some caveats, right? We talked about the fact that you have to provide accurate information. We talked about the fact that you can't breach confidentiality. You can't do things that could evaluate our personnel in public. So there are limitations to the First Amendment rights of Board of Education members. We have a policy that you should be aware of, 0146 and 0169. And what that policy says is that if you're a board member, for instance, that likes to post on social media or write letters to the newspapers or tweet on X or whatever you like to do or give speeches or whatnot, you have to make it clear that you're speaking as an individual and that you're not speaking on behalf of the Board of Education. Because like I said before, you don't have a right to speak on behalf of the board. So if you want to post or give your opinions about issues affecting the school district, you need to have a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is as follows. You need to say that the following statements are made by me in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinions. This way, the public knows that when you're speaking, you're not speaking as the board member of Glen Rock, you're speaking as a private citizen and they're your own opinions, and that they don't necessarily represent those of the Board of Education. Yes?
So I guess the complication is always like, if you're a private citizen speaking on behalf of something, wouldn't it have to have been something potentially that would come up at a public meeting, as opposed to like, I'm a private citizen speaking about something that I'm only aware of because I'm a board member?
Yes, so what's the question? I'm sorry, what's the question? I'm sorry.
The conflict being like, when you're speaking about something as a private citizen, it's hard to separate that from the fact that you're a board member, because you may be aware of it only specifically because you're a board member.
Possibly, yes, and that's why you have to be super careful to make sure you're not divulging information that you learn, for instance, in closed session or that sort of thing. Look, if you're talking about just some issue that really doesn't affect the board, you don't need a disclaimer on that sort of thing. The whole purpose of the disclaimer in the policy is so that the public is not confused about, whether Liz, for instance, is speaking about an issue, but is she really speaking for the board in this case? No, you have to make it clear that, no, these are my own personal opinions. I'm taking off the board hat now, and I'm putting on the private citizen, individual citizen hat. That's so that there's no confusion. That's really the theme behind it.
The safest thing to do in that situation is just to say nothing anywhere.
Look, I happen to be a big fan of board members not posting about board issues on social media, where you read all the cases from the School Ethics Commission, lots of cases where board members get themselves into hot water because they're talking about things perhaps they shouldn't be talking about. And sometimes it aggravates the rest of the board too, because who gave you the right to kind of go out there? We have a public meeting. This is the place probably where you should be expressing those viewpoints and opinions, not once you leave the room. So yeah, I strongly agree with what you just said. Yeah. Political issues, look, again, you have a right to comment on political issues. That's your First Amendment right. But if you're going to talk about, political issues, just make sure it's clear that you're speaking as an individual, not for the Board of Education. Yes, I would say so. Now, there are some cases from the School Ethics Commission that go a little further, and they say, look, if it's clearly an issue that has nothing to do with the school district, if you're just talking about, hey, look, in the next election, I think you should vote for John Doe because he's going to be good for our community, probably don't need a disclaimer in that case. But I think if you said something like, I think you should vote for John Doe because he's going to be great for the Glen Rock School District, I would say you clearly need a disclaimer for something like that. Because now you're tying it to the board, and now, is he speaking? Does the whole board agree with that, or is that just your own individual statement? So I like to do a little quiz every year. I'm not going to call on anybody, so don't get nervous. But real cases that have come down recently from the School Ethics Commission. So as you know, I handed out the little Code of Ethics provisions and the conflict sections here. So this has to do with the conflict section. So do you think a board member violated sections B and C, which says no school official shall use his official position to secure an unwarranted privilege or advantage for himself, members of his family, or others, or C, no school official shall act in a matter in which he or a member of his immediate family or a business organization in which he has an interest has a direct or indirect involvement that might be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of judgment, etc. So do you think a board member violated that when she asked the superintendent to provide a sworn statement on her behalf in response to an ethics complaint that was filed against the board member? So in this particular case, a board member was the subject of an ethics complaint, and she approached the superintendent and said, look, you were there, you're aware of the facts of what happened here. Would you be willing to provide a statement that I could submit in my answer to the complaint to the School Ethics Commission? And somebody got wind of the fact that the board member asked the superintendent to write a statement on their behalf, and they filed another ethics complaint saying you violated section B and C by asking the superintendent. Now you got two ethics complaints you got to deal with. So do you think this was a violation or not a violation of those two provisions?
I think a violation.
So I see some no's, I see some yeses. The answer, it was not a violation. Ed, I think you shook your head no, and so you got that right. So they said, look, asking the superintendent, as long as you weren't putting pressure on the superintendent and saying, hey, your contract's coming up, you really should give me that statement that I need for my case, there was nothing wrong with asking the superintendent the School Ethics Commission held to provide a factual statement about what had occurred that the superintendent was privy to, not a violation. How about this one? A board president violated Section E of the Code of Ethics. This is the Code of Ethics now, not the conflicts. Section E says, recognizing your authority rests with the board and not making personal promises or taking private action that could compromise the board. So do you think a board member violated that when she unilaterally canceled the board, it should say board meeting, I'm sorry, when she canceled a board meeting in which a large public presence was expected? So board president gets wind there's going to be a large public gathering at the meeting, and she cancels the meeting. This was in Pleasantville. Don't worry, this was not Glen Rock. Do you think that was a violation? No, I see a no, and I'm going to go with the answer that it is no. They said, look, board president has certain authority. Call meetings, cancel meetings. There was nothing unethical, no violation of personal promises or taking private action by canceling a Board of Education meeting. How about this one? A board member who previously worked as a security officer in the district 3 years prior to becoming a board member and was critical of the superintendent at the time is conflicted on matters referred to the superintendent, related to the superintendent. What do you think of that? Do you think so you understand the facts here? Security officer, worked in the district, then 3 years later gets elected to the board. And while the person was a security officer, had some problems with the superintendent at the time. And the question was, is this person now conflicted from the superintendent given the bad blood that existed at the time that security officer was an employee of the school district? What do you think? Conflicted or not conflicted? I see Dr. Robinson saying no. I agree. It was not. And the School Ethics Commission said, the fact that the board member submitted a resignation letter outlining perceived adverse actions by the superintendent, including dissatisfaction with changes to the individual's job position and salary, or his admitted vocal opposition to the superintendent, does not mean that he cannot exercise independence of judgment or otherwise be objective in matters relating to the superintendent. Moreover, the board member did not become a board member until 3 years after his resignation, which is a sufficient amount of time to have lapsed, and there's nothing in your request to suggest that he ran for a seat on the board with a personal vendetta against the superintendent. So, not an issue. I think they kind of did leave the door open. You know, they said it was 3 years ago. So if it was 3 months before this person got on the board, maybe the outcome would have been different. So this was where it says A1925 in the corner. That means it was not a complaint. It was actually an advisory opinion somebody requested from the School Ethics Commission saying, hey, can that security officer be involved in matters pertaining to the superintendent? How about this one? A board member who employs a district teacher to tutor his child or her child is conflicted from being a member of the board's negotiating committee while she's employing the teacher as the child's tutor. Do you think that that is true or false? Anybody think it's false? It is true. You are correct. So when you employ a staff member of the district in your own district, you're creating a conflict for yourself. The board member was conflicted, and what the School Ethics Commission said was that the board member should recuse from all matters relating to the teacher's employment while the teacher is employed as the board member A as in letter A's child, / tutor. Should the matter come before the board that involves the teacher, board member A should not participate in any discussions or votes related to same. This includes, but is not limited to, any and all matters related to the local union, as well as any employees who directly supervise the teacher. Furthermore, board member A should not be a member of the negotiations committee while he or she is employing the teacher as the child's tutor, regardless of whether there are any currently pending related actions that would directly impact the teacher. So you got to think about that. If you're going to hire a staff member of the district as a board member to tutor your child or whatnot, you're now creating a conflict pretty much as to everything having to do with the union, as well as everybody up the chain of command. So this, again, was an advisory opinion request, so presumably, I assume, once the board member got it, they decided they're going to get a tutor from another school district, which is probably a good thing anyway. A couple more and then we're done. A board member who received signatures on our nominating petition to run for the board from district administrators who lived in town is conflicted from any matters relating to the employment of those administrators. So board member is running for election, or a person is running for election for the board, and they go to local administrators who happen to live in town and said, hey, can you sign my nominating petition? The question was, once that person got elected to the board, which she did, was she now conflicted as to the administrators who signed her nominating petition? What do you think? I see Liz shaking her head no. Anybody think yes? And you are correct. It was not a conflict of interest. And what the School Ethics Commission said was that signing a petition in their private capacity as individuals who live in the community in and of itself is not enough to present a conflict for board member A and board member B. Absent any additional facts which are not present here, it cannot be assumed that board member A and board member B have or will surrender their independent judgment to the administrators. Therefore, as long as board member A and B are members of the board and they don't, among other things, attempt to leverage or otherwise rely on their board positions to engage in conduct which substantially conflicts with their services as board members, they're not prohibited from voting on anything having to do with those administrators. Okay, how about this one, a board member violated section B of the code, and that's the one that says you're supposed to make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of all children. So did a board member violate that when he voted no on a resolution reaffirming the district's stance on inclusion for all students? So this one just makes my head spin a little bit. They have a resolution basically saying we're going to include everybody. We're here for everybody. And this board member votes no to that resolution. And somebody filed an ethics complaint saying you violated section B. Do you think that was a violation? Yes or no? No. You're right. It was not a violation. It's crazy. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's crazy, but it was no. And there are lots of cases out there, by the way, where ethics complaints are filed against board members for the way they vote on things. And the commission universally holds how you vote as a board member is not an ethics violation. Again, unless it's a conflict, that's an ethics violation. But voting yes or no on something that you feel strongly about is not going to be an ethics violation. Okay, final question of the night. I hit the button. Hopefully you didn't see that. A board member with a podcast focusing on the town council. So a board member's got a podcast, and it's all about the local town council. So did he violate section I, which is the section says that board members have to support and protect school personnel? Did he violate that section when he described the complainant, who is a supervisor in his district, as a tyrant, narcissist, and creepy? Problem or not a problem?
False.
It was false. It was not a violation. And they said, look, he was talking about him really in his capacity as the council president, really not as the supervisor in the district where he was a board member. So not a violation. It was false. And so, like I said, I've read a lot of these decisions, and I often scratch my head because your knee-jerk reaction on a lot of these things is, it sounds like an ethics violation, but if you really take a little bit of a deeper dive, you have to actually look at the words of the various code provisions and see if there's an actual violation there. And so, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, concerns? No? We're good? Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. All right, so at this time, I will open our first set of public comments. The first set of public comments is on action items only. In this meeting, the last meeting, we had a snow date and school was closed, so we compressed the two agendas. So the action items are things that are also held over from that period of time. So if we open that at 8:06 p.m., and if there's anyone that has any comments on action or voting items, please state your name, address, and you'll have 3 minutes. All right. Seeing nobody, we'll close that first public comments at 8:06 p.m. Can I get a motion to discuss G1 through G9? Ms. Parlamis, seconded by Mr. Hayward.
Do you mean to move? You said to discuss.
All right, so G1 through, go ahead.
You need a second. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
had
you're
a
going to do the
second.
discussion first?
Yeah, the
Okay.
discussion, and then if you want to explain. maybe.
Yeah, sure. All right, just let me clarify. So basically, under Robert's rules, technically, it's supposed to be motion, second, and then discussion. So that was my recommendation to Dr. Robinson. Somebody moves items G1 through 7, is it?
9.
Oh, G1 through 9, second, somebody would second it, and then we would engage in the discussion and then vote. Just so it's, yeah.
Okay.
So somebody can move them.
Did we have that? Did I have a first and a second?
You could move it.
All right. Do you have, so who do we have for making the motion? Parlamis and then a second by Hayward.
Parlamis and a second by Hayward.
And then now,
So the motion's on the floor.
motions on the floor, and then we discuss G1 through G9. So is it the wording that I had, like like a motion, because I had a motion to discuss instead, so,
Yeah, so a motion to discuss is really not technically proper. It's a motion to move items G1 through 9. May I have a second, and then discussion, and then vote? Yep.
all right.
Mark, do you have an issue with the way we write it? We write it a motion to approve.
Yes, so that's fine, too.
Okay.
It's
All right.
really just not a motion to discuss.
Just
It's a motion to either vote or approve. Yep.
Noted. So any comments or questions about G1 through G9? Ms. Parlamas?
I just want to thank G8. We have 3 very generous donors for some beautiful items, the golf cart, the girls' ice hockey expenses, and the wrestling singlets, and just to thank those donors.
Absolutely. It's amazing, actually, that we have members of the community that are able to help this way, so very thankful. Mr. Corey?
Of course, yeah, to second everything you said on G8, that's just fantastic, whoever you are. On G7, the 29-passenger bus, is that the one that was totaled through our insurance settlement? So that's something that's just going off our books now.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? No? All right, if we're able to take roll.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayward?
Yes.
Ms. Parlamas?
Yes.
Dr. Pucci Bender?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Tang?
Yes.
Ms. Calvez?
Yes.
Dr. Robinson?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Can I have a motion to approve resolutions B1 through B6? Mr. Corey, seconded by Mr. Hayward. Any comments or questions about B1 through B6? All right, seeing none, if we could have roll call, please.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayward?
Yes.
Ms. Parlamas?
Yes.
Dr. Pucci Bender?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Tang?
Yes.
Ms. Calvez?
Yes.
Dr. Robinson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Can I have a motion to approve resolutions P1 through P15? Mr. Tang, seconded by Dr. Pucci Bender. Any comments or questions with regards to P1 through P15? Yes, Ms. Stevenson.
For P1, I would just like to congratulate all those teachers on their retirement. I wish them well. I thank them for their service to Glen Rock, and I hope their retirement is long and healthy.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes, Ms. Parlamas.
P14, I just want to say excellent hires. That one.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Pucci Bender.
On P1, I'd like to give a special thank you for the years that Mrs. Moger provided to the district. She was my children's kindergarten teacher when she served as a kindergarten teacher. Best wishes to all of them. It's well-deserved. Thank you again.
Yes. I mean, some of the names on this list have served this community for decades, and so there's definitely much appreciation from this board and this community for their service for our children. Any additional comments or questions with our P items? All right. If we're able to call roll, Mr. Canellis?
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayward?
Yes.
Ms. Parlamas?
Yes.
Dr. Pucci Bender?
Yes.
Ms. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Tang?
Yes.
Ms. Calvez?
Yes.
Dr. Robinson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And we have our vandalism suspension HIB reports as of January 26 on the notes. And then we will begin our COW agenda. So this would have typically been a COW meeting, which is where we would have initially started. Our first item is under policy. And so if we want to have a discussion of our first read of some of these new policies.
Thank you. So I shared with you the guidance from Strauss Esme for these things, and I'll just briefly review some of these things. P0142.1, there are no material revisions. They just reorganized it to better align with the code. So it's just a revised copy. It's a mandated policy that we need to have. Nothing changes, really. P1220 is revised with just a few revisions to legal citations. So same thing, we have the same choices. We'll model it after what we currently have. 1552, so we used to have, or we currently have actually, policies 3362 and 4352. Each of those addressed sexual harassment, but did not include protections under Title IX, federal laws for Title IX. So this new policy, 1552, incorporates sexual harassment law in both Title VII and Title IX in one spot. They describe it as legally complex, and it's a much more detailed policy and gives the administration a much clearer path to follow for any kind of allegations of sexual harassment. What that means, which I'll skip down, policy 3362 and 4552 are being abolished because what was contained in those about sexual harassment of teaching staff and support staff is now incorporated into this new policy. So it's a mandated policy. It's lengthy, but it puts it all in one place for us, which is good. Policy 2530 is about resource materials. So there was a recent law called the Freedom to Read Act, and it's specifically about library materials, library books, library materials, library resources, and what is the policy about how are materials placed in the library and how can they be challenged by the public. So what they've done is they removed every reference to library materials from this one, which is resource materials, and created a whole new policy just for library materials. So this policy, 2530, has had the library stuff removed, and the next one, 2535, is new to address just library stuff. And one of the things that it does includes the curation of collections, but it also talks specifically about who may challenge materials and what that process is. So who's allowed to, and basically you have to be affiliated in some way, a parent, a staff member or something. It can't just be somebody off of the street. But it spells all of that out. And then the last one here is public complaints, P9130. And basically the only change they did here is they removed anything about library books because there's a whole new policy about library. So that used to have a section in there about complaining about materials in the library, which has now been removed. So these are the policies from Strauss. This is the first reading of it. You have the marked up documents. Happy to answer any questions if I can, or we'll look into it if you have more detailed questions.
I had a question about the policy about the superintendent or the chief school administrator. So in reading through it, I noticed that it didn't make mention of an interim or an acting. So I didn't know, maybe this is a question for Mark, whether or not the policy really should have some kind of capture that an interim or a acting superintendent shall have the same power that a superintendent has. You know, basically possess the same authority and responsibility as the chief school administrator, because the policy really only acts towards the superintendent, and we might be in a position where we have an acting, we have an interim.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think it's necessary, and I'll tell you why. There's a separate law in Title 18A, which is the school laws that I talked about before, that talks about the Board of Education's authority to appoint somebody as the acting person in the place of somebody when they're absent, essentially, from the position with all the rights and responsibilities. So I don't think it's necessary to put it into the policy because it's already codified in statute. Yeah.
Okay, so without any other questions about the policy alert, we'll have them on the meeting on the 23rd for the second reading and approval, and then we'll look at the regulations that go with them as well.
Excellent, thank you.
The next piece of policy discussion we had under old business is the ad hoc committee had some questions or recommendations from the New Jersey School Boards Association policy wellness check that we did. And one of the difficulties that we have is that school board policy check They organize the policies their way with their numbering system and Strauss Esme organizes it another way. So we have also had Strauss look at our policy to double check. I included that letter in backup, and there are a few irregularities that they want us to see correcting, minor things. So we're looking through those things right now, and I'll provide you an update for that. I can certainly, I know that the chair of that committee is not here now, so we can certainly talk about those recommendations next time.
I think it would be helpful. I think it would also be helpful to have that conversation while he is here, unless, I mean, I'll leave that as a decision to the board. Would you like us to continue on with regards to the policy wellness check and those questions that Mr. Cohen asked, or should we hold that item and we could just talk about it at the next meeting when he's available? Yeah. And it's not time sensitive, so
Yep.
yeah, I think we can hold it. That's okay.
Perfectly fine.
All right. And with that, would you be able to include in our next documents, like that
Yes.
document that Strauss Esme provided that showed what the missing pieces were?
Yep.
Just to follow along. Thank you.
You bet. Not listed on here, but under old business that I just want to give you an update on is the cell phone policy or internet-enabled devices guidance, et cetera. So the state, the Governor Murphy on his way out signed the law, and we have now, the Commissioner of Education has now released guidance for schools on use of internet-enabled devices. They released it in January. Strauss Esme sent us an email a few weeks ago that said they're reviewing the guidance and the law and will revise policy and regulation guides accordingly, which will be released mid-spring 2026 to allow school officials time to review and adopt before the next school year. I'm not sure exactly what mid-spring means, but when we get that guidance, we will share it with you and we will make a plan. I'm sure it will have basically a menu of options of how we want to do it that all fits within the law, and we can talk about how that looks. Okay. And then the next piece on here is Policy 2430. So Policy 2430 is about co-curricular activities, and we had a student speak about it. We've had our student representative speak about it, questioning what is our policy for creating new clubs is the sticking point. So I've talked with administration about it, and it's a high school issue generally. And the issue is that students want to create a lot of clubs, and we have a process for doing that. And part of our process, I'll admit, it slows things down a little bit, right? Because we want to be careful and methodical and make sure that the clubs that we're offering are appropriately staffed, right? That we have teachers who can do it. Teachers are very nice. They will volunteer as club advisors when nice kids ask them to do things, but often they're doing a lot. So for example, right now, we have 84 clubs at the high school. We have 78 staff members. So if you do that math, you know that people are advising more than one club at a time, and our teachers' time is valuable, right? And we want to be careful and cognizant of that. 29 of those people are volunteering. They're not getting paid to advise these clubs, right? And we want to just keep that in mind. So we want to make sure that we have appropriate staffing. We want to make sure that we're not duplicating clubs already. With 84 different clubs, we often have requests for a duplicate, or it's very similar to that club that already exists. If we create a second club that's really, really similar, it could end up diffusing both of those, and they might not both have enough kids in it, right? And we want to make sure that they're strengthened. And then the third thing that we really work on when we're looking through this club process is to make sure that the club is sustainable. So is there interest, not just from the person requesting it, but are there enough kids that are going to keep it going? Because the last thing we want to do is put all this work to create a new club just to have it peter out because a student graduates, right? So those are the things that we're always looking at. And so we do have a process in place that they have to submit an application. There's a committee that reviews it. We make sure that they have a club advisor. We make sure it's not duplicating. And it does take time. But the time frame makes sense to us, right? So when I talk to administration, this is something that we believe in. We think that this is the right thing to do, partly to protect the time and our expertise of our teachers, partly to make sure that the clubs are sustainable, partly to make sure that everything's just monitored well. So that's where we are with it. Everything that we do fits very much within our policy when I'm reviewing the policy, starting with assessing the needs and interests of students in the district, and making a recommendation to the board. So I don't see a need to change the district policy. I think it's working. The administration feels it's working, but I wanted to report back out to you all.
All right, thank you for following up on that. Is there a problem, for instance, like I know when this comes up, there, you know, the children have made it seem like there's not a way for them to organize or to still meet. Would it be, you know, possible that if a child wanted to start it and maybe missed the application window, that they would be able to still meet perhaps even at the library or something like that? Like, so it's not like we're, from what I hear, it's not like we're preventing children from, you know, advocating for issues or, you know, forming clubs or forming, you know, like groups and things like that. They just aren't necessarily officially recognized until they go through that process.
I think so, and I think also having that, for lack of a better word, grassroots movement probably would strengthen their request for a club. Look, we have this many kids that have been involved and we want to bring it onto the campus here. Might have a stronger application, if you will.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions or,
Dr. Damali, I just want some clarification. You said the library. I believe you mean the public library.
I meant the public library, because I understand that if it's not a recognized school club, you can't have, right? That's, okay, you can't have it on public property without it being recognized. And then if, I mean, any adult could, you know, request to use our facilities, but then you have to have a whole other process that would not apply to a student. That would, you'd have to have insurance and things like that. So, yes. Mr. Corey.
I think that commentary just kind of hit to what I was trying to say.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
I think that's all I have on policy.
All right.
So on the same time, I remember the case was, the student had a cousin, right? Was killed. That, I just feel waiting a year is really like long time, right? Because there's a time and sensitivity to the event, right? In that particular case.
Yeah, and I think that there could be cases for exceptions, but I think the review process is still going to take time to make sure we have an advisor, to make sure that this is an appropriate club, to make sure that there are others that are interested in participating in all that. So my understanding is, I think she is going to submit that paperwork and we'll move forward with that. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, only because I think that that was something that was striking at time sensitive, and the social emotional that we keep talking about is very important, the mental health issues. So I think that if there is some sort of way to differentiate between, you know, a need, right, versus a want, that maybe there could be, you know, just looked at a little bit more closely, with a closer view.
I do have a question there, because would we be opening ourselves up to a situation where, like, you know, is your story good enough? Like, how do we then determine whether or not somebody's story is, like, good enough? Like, that, and, you know, fully respecting this individual situation here that we all heard, right? Absolutely feeling for the student, her family, the gun violence overall. But I also want to make sure that we're not setting anything up for an unfair process, because then you're like, is this tugging the heartstrings enough, you know?
No, I agree with you on that, but I'm just thinking that maybe if there could be, for, you know, you have to sometimes use your judgment, right?
Tamale.
Oh, yes, Ms. Collins.
In this case, I think the student made an excellent point on, you know, you kind of have a window of only being a sophomore or junior, because when you're a freshman, you have to wait a year to get the club going. When you're a senior, you're out the door. Is there perhaps a way that we can increase awareness of this in the 8th grade level, of what do you have to do to create a club? Or you think the students are already very versed on how to do this?
I'm not
So that
really comfortable with saying to 8th graders who are not part of the high school, start planning clubs when you haven't even gotten to high school yet, right? And that's part of the piece, is that, you know, this is a different situation, but so many of these clubs, we have 84 clubs. You know, somebody might come and say, hey, I really want to do X, Y, or Z, but that might be, check out the club fair first, right? Like, let's see what we have already going on. We have a lot. So I'm not comfortable with a student who's not here yet proposing a club for when they get here.
And not proposing, but just understanding the process. I was just trying to, address her point, which was, that it takes a while to get the whole maturation process going, to get the club going, so. But okay, fair enough.
So I would then ask, like, in this situation, since we're talking about that request from a prior meeting, if there was like a way for that student to like, would there be any problem with that student going out to the community and saying, like, would anyone help me start a Kids Demand Action club? And then, like, just immediately, like, if you can get, I'm sure that there would be a member of the community that would be likely willing, that may or may not, like, no, but it wouldn't be necessarily on us, but maybe guiding that student to saying, hey, these are some venues for you to potentially ask. We don't have control over that process, but perhaps you can find somebody to, like, help you start this club in the community. And then when that application period opens up, then submit your application for it to be considered an official school club. So that way it's not like hampering that desire that the student has for action, for meeting. You're able to build a group of people, and you're able to just go for it. We're not preventing you. At least that's the understanding that I'm getting, like, that we could really work as a community to do this outside of the school while the school process is a little bit different. Do you think that would, I think this is part of our conversation, but do you think that that would kind of like address some of the issue? It's not like they can't start it, but.
Yes, I do think that if kids understood, what other avenues that they could pursue, yes, I agree with your point. Yes.
Yes.
I did want to expand on my thought now that this conversation is expanding too. One thing that Mr. Van Ness expressed was, I think, the second point of, would one club kind of consume the other operations, and does this function already exist? With the one particular request, I immediately felt myself going into a different mode. I've noticed we're all empathetic people, and my first thought was, okay, health and welfare of a person who's expressing a need for themselves. I was comforted to know that she found that club outside of the structure of what the school can help her create. There's a lot of things outside the school, and I think our job is to incubate students a little bit to let them go out. And it sounds like she did that already. So maybe for this individual's desire, that might actually be better suited in the environment that she found, specifically the organization. But like for our role, I think that's pretty, that kind of hits to the broader policy that we're trying to write of, does something already exist for this to happen? And that's a great ratio. We're over a 1-to-1 of clubs to advisors. That sounds like quite a lot. I hope that they're all meeting at least twice a month, because it gives the kids the viability within that group. So these are tough questions for us to have to judge individually, and which is kind of why our policy puts it together to make a unwieldy task more manageable. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions with regards to 2430? All right. All right. So also under policy, I was going to ask Mr. Cohen if he would, if we would be able to make like another committee meeting to then determine a way and a process for us to review all of our policies. But I'm actually going to tie that into our governance discussion. I kind of decided at the last minute I want to add something to like a new business under governance. In the past, and this predates, I would say in a way it predates my presence on the board, but we had a different committee structure. We had committees, like we worked out of committees as opposed to the committee of the whole. So Rona McNabola, who was, like an amazing board member and long tenured here, when we had the cow structure, she would go through a lot of policies just consistently, and I just remember her like going through that. And I don't know that we actually had any one of us that specifically has taken over that kind of like leadership and policies since then. And so through that process, I feel like we aren't, when I say reviewing, we review individual policies a lot. We get a lot of things from Strauss-Esme and we go through that, but we aren't reviewing it in the series fashion in the same rhythm. And I could see where years going forward can pass and we're not necessarily always proactively reviewing a certain series. So I was going to make a recommendation that we start off with maybe 2 series out of this, our entire policy manual, like maybe let's say like the 5,000 series and 1,000 series like this year, and then like next year, it's maybe like 2 and 4, and then the following, it's 3 and 1, or like whatever, so that we review all of our policy manual on a more intentional basis, as opposed to reactionary. And so that is now another time for us to just talk about our structure. And I briefly asked Mr. Zittimer about what he sees, like you go through, you have 60-plus boards that you have, and like if you could talk about how many of them actually have a committee of the whole structure, how that differs from what we are doing. And I think over years, I mean, I've been board president for, this is my 3rd year, vice president before that, and I've really tried to be intentional about moving us to a point where we're discussing a lot more of things in a way as close as you can to a committee structure, but it doesn't ever quite fully get there. And I've only known a committee of the whole structure, so.
Yeah, sure. So just probably for the benefit of some of the newer members, this board, as you know, operates as a committee of the whole, which means that with few exceptions, we generally tackle issues as a full body of the board, as opposed to having individual committees that vet issues with the administration, report out at public meetings about the work that they do, and then they would usually correspond to a particular section of the agenda. Some of my boards have, for instance, a policy committee that meets regularly. You are a policy-making body. That's one of your main functions. And so if you're, and in my experience, it's hard to do that as a committee of the whole. It really is, to have 9 board members weighing in on policy. I think there's a lot of detail work that needs to be done. So having that done as a committee that's going to work with the administration and then report out on recommendations to the full board is a better way to do it. Some of my boards have a finance committee, budget time. They meet with the business administrator, vet issues, and then come back to the full board with recommendations. Personnel is another committee that some of my boards have. You're appointing personnel all the time. You would meet with the superintendent about the personnel. You would ask questions, and then again, report out at the board meeting on those issues. Most of my boards have kind of moved away from, a lot of my boards have moved away from the committee of the whole structure that you have to more of a committee type structure. They find it's a much more efficient way to do business. You can take a much deeper dive into some of these issues than you can at a regular meeting without being here till 1 o'clock in the morning. And some of my boards have even found that by moving to the committee structure, they've been able to actually have 1 meeting a month rather than 2 meetings a month, because it makes the board that much more efficient. But the board members have to be committed to doing the work and to taking the time that the committees require, because it does require time and effort, and vetting issues a lot more closely probably than you do at the regular meetings. I personally like the committee structure. I think it's a better way to do business. I think it's just hard to operate and really take a fine look at some of these issues as a full board, and to give it the proper attention that it needs.
This is our moment to open up this discussion and for everyone to kind of weigh in. I mean, no time like the present. We've been dancing around this issue for months, if not years. So I think at this point we have a strong ability to look back. Like Angela, you've been on the board before, and then you're coming back to us. And I think, like your opinion, you'll have a lot to say, and maybe anybody else. So go for it. Go.
If I may, I think that echoing, your sentiments, Mr. Zittimer, that having the committees allows the superintendent and the BA at times, when it's a finance committee, to have these deeper, richer conversations in a smaller group. And then the topics that are discussed in one committee can be had and woven into other committees. Let me give an example, simple example. You're hiring a new staff member in a certain department area. Well, that also becomes part of finance, right? So that same conversation can be had, so that the small groups are getting the same information from the same people, which are your superintendent, acting superintendent, BA. Everyone's hearing it. Everyone has an opportunity to ask more detailed questions, deeper again, as I said before, the richer. And I think that we function better when we come back to the community and we say that we had these discussions, and then we report to the community what the discussions were, outside of anything that might be confidential. I think it just is a little bit more efficient for everyone getting the same information, all at their appropriate times, instead of open dialogue, which doesn't, more is said when you're having an intimate conversation than when you're just big.
And I think it kind of goes back into like, one of the things that we discussed in your presentation, Mark, was like the accurate information when you're saying it. So the problem that we have here in this environment sometimes is like, well, we would almost just want to talk about it. We almost just want to like kind of bring up certain things and just like say, hey, what do you think about this? But that same like, what do you think could then be looked at from the community as like, this is what they're going to do. This is what they want to do. Like, so we're never able to just have honest, open, fully honest, open conversations without potential repercussion that the things that were just like floating as ideas that are coming from us individually are absolutely the way that the board is going to do something. Even the calendar, for example, like we basically talk about the calendar way far in advance and then have other discussions, about it, like leading up to the final thing. If it was worked on fully in the committees, then perhaps that's an area where we would have been able to be like, okay, now this is what we're saying at the end. Like, this is the recommendation of this committee to the board, and then it's just different. Like, I don't know.
So much easier to bounce ideas off of one another in a small group than it is in a formal setting like this.
Any other, I know, well, actually, I'm going to ask, both of you were on the board as well when it was a committee? Yeah.
No, they had already moved to a whole committee of the whole right before I started. But I do know when they had a straight committee structure, I would say there was a lot of, I'm going to call it infighting at the time, and that's why they switched. And credit to you, and I guess to all of us, is, we seem to get along much better. We understand we can have differences and discussions and points of view, and I think that trust is required to allow people to be in committees and know that smaller group's going to do a job and then bring it back to the board and report back. So I'm a fan of it. I like the idea, and I think we have the ability to do that.
Okay. Yes.
I've only been on the board for the committee of the whole, but as somebody who used to attend, I believe not only like with the infighting, I think there was a level that people wanted transparency. But I think if the committees are functioning and there is trust there, and I do agree with Ed, that we do have a lot of trust here amongst the board members, that when the committee reports back out, it will be in public and we can still have a discussion on it. It's just that there'll be more information that we have coming in and have time then to formulate questions. Sometimes here, if we're just discussing something for the first time, you don't think of something right away. And it's not until after, like, you think about it, okay, let me ask. So, I would be a fan of switching over and doing the committees. I think we're in a good place as a board right now to do that.
And I think a lot of it will also then depend on, like, if this is something, like, one, I'll also talk separately with the administration, but if this is something that we want to do as a board, whoever's in the president role in choosing the chairs of the committees, that's also something in fidelity, because what could happen is that you have somebody that has a personal agenda for something, and now they don't want to ever touch this issue and dance around it or ignore it or don't ever put it on the committee agenda. I mean, that happens at the state level. You can't get things passed because it never actually makes it into committee, and it never makes it out of committee onto the Senate floor or things like that. So we don't want that version of that here. So I think it's, incumbent upon any member that's currently or in the future going to be on the board that if they decided that this is not, that they just kept that in mind and kept each other honest. But I would love to hear, think about it a little bit more and then, send me your thoughts. And then what was the process then? Do you happen to remember, were you here at the time? Before your time? Well, I'll find out more about the process. If we, yeah, we had some committees initially, yeah. And we kind of had a budget committee, but it's different than a full.
Finance, negotiation.
Yeah, we have ad hoc committees.
Buildings and grounds was a committee.
Building and grounds.
Personnel, instruction and program.
Yeah, okay.
I
All right,
think it's
some
worth
more.
saying, we've been modeling a committee light in this, and it's been functioning, and the board has been adapting to that, and that it creates an opportunity to blend up, I'm not going to say just the CSA, but a leadership team to be able to balance to those committees' needs as well. So we're trending towards that direction, and it's working. So it seems like the right step. Even if we did this much, this is better than putting everything into just a cow structure.
Yeah.
So
So are you saying you're in favor of committees potentially, or?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I've been saying that for
Okay,
a
well,
while.
I hear you. All right. All right, so more to follow, but definitely get back to me, and I'll also have probably separate conversations with you as well, and get your feedback.
One last question. One last question, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman, can you verify, when we have the committee of the whole structure, are there supposed to be actionable or are there not supposed to be actionable items on the agenda? When it's a committee of the whole, right? I'm asking.
So the answer is you don't necessarily have to have actionable items at every agenda. So some districts that operate as a committee of the whole have one meeting a month where it's committee of the whole. You're doing all the committee discussions and issues, and then the second meeting of the month is the action meeting where they vote on all the committee of the whole issues that came up at the prior board meeting. Yeah.
All right. All right, so I think we're closed for that, governance and policy. So more to follow with policy, and then I'd say we'll have an update on this discussion at our next meeting and see, what the thoughts are and come back. Nothing else under governance, IMP, special services, management and community. We have the website migration update.
Sure, just a quick update from our Director of Communications. We started with the district website, so they're migrating it to the new host, which is Aptigee, and that is migrated over in a draft form right now. The middle school and high school website is ready to begin migration as of last week, so it may well have been migrated, I'm not sure. And then the community school and all the elementary school websites will be next, so she's working with them to do that. The goal is to complete the content migration for all sites by late February or early March, leaving 4 to 6 weeks to verify accuracy, test functionality, and update content, so it's all just launch ready. She confirmed a tentative website launch date of Friday, May the 1st. And then we will, sometime before that, we will work on training staff members. So the goal is to have 2 people in each school know how to manage their site, so it can be done locally. She says it's a much easier website to manage than the one that we have right now, so she's confident it's going to go smoothly.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you. And,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Just, I know we emailed about this, but just for the benefit of all here, are we able to get web analytics on the site and data for there?
We have access to that. I'm reaching out to Rich Santos, our IT director, to get that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I feel like there was something else I was about to ask, and I lost my train of thought. All right, forget it. So, thank you. Any other questions with regards to, the website or anything under management and community? All right, thank you. All right, so on to fiscal management and draft budget. Yes, please.
Thank you, Thank you, Dr. Robinson. So, consistent with prior years, the first meeting in February typically marks the board's first look at the proposed budget. It has been circulated to everyone, both in narrative and numeric form. We would like you to review that. If you have any questions, we are going to be setting up some micro meetings based upon people's desire to come and talk. The Finance Committee met last Monday and went over what the state of our budget looks like. And to be honest, we really have a 2-story budget this year. The first story is the 2% tax levy story. And we're happy to report that we were able to prepare a reconciled budget within the 2% cap. That includes all of our operating costs, and some portion of the second story. And that second story is the state health insurance plan cost increases, which have been astronomical. The state says that their premiums went up 31%. If I look at it, it's more like 34%, but it doesn't matter what I say, it matters what they say. And so we have incorporated that as of January 1. Our benefits advisors are advising based on some of the conversations that are happening in Trenton on the insurance fund that we would be seeing a similar 30% increase for January 1, 2027. The result of that is a $3.2 million increase in health insurance premiums. So what does the government, the state give us to try to manage that? Well, they give us something called the health insurance cap adjustment. And what that says is you can take an adjustment to your tax levy cap equal to 98% of the increase of those costs. So the district assumes 2%, which we've assumed, which is about $800,000 in our general operating 2% budget. And the credit that we are eligible to take is $2.3 million. Therefore, our tax levy would be increasing by a total of $3.4 million. So what have we done to try to control our health insurance costs? Well, the first thing we did is back in the fall, we submitted our claims rates, which we have done now for 2 consecutive years. Our claims rates basically give us an idea of what our claims are versus the premiums that are paid. Unfortunately, ours is about 131%, meaning for every dollar of premium that we pay, we are paying out in cost from the funds $1.31. Obviously, that is not a good ratio. What the target number is in the industry is 85%, which leaves 15% for the insurance companies on their commission, you know, the difference between the premiums and the actual medical payments. With 131% claims rate, in consultation with our benefits broker, it was determined that we are not a candidate to go out and come out of the state plan and insure privately. By way of example, I received a call on Friday from a gentleman who wanted to put us into a private plan, and he was the sales pitch was anybody with 100 to 108%, and that's increased from in the past, but we're nowhere near 108%. So we explored that. There really isn't a place for us to go. What we need is Trenton to give us some help in reforming the plan. And there are lots of ideas out there as to how you reform the plan, whether it be plan design or the drugs that are included in the formulary, as well as who can and can't leave the state plan. So unfortunately, that $2.3 million of tax levy increase is beyond our control. It is what it is, and we are recommending that the district take the full 2.3%, $2.3 million credit. So what does that mean? Everybody likes to talk about tax rates, and I hate doing tax rates before we strike a final budget, but we did it anyhow. We estimated ratables in the district based on the same increase from last year, and we adjusted also the average home value for the same increase as last year. We'll be getting those numbers from the assessor's office in a couple of weeks, and then we'll be able to give you a firmer number. But what it looks like a 2.38% tax rate increase. So what does that mean? That means an average home of about $600,000 is going to see an increase of $517 annually, $43.10 monthly. A $1 million home will see an $868 increase annually, or $72.40 monthly. A $1.5 million home will see an increase of $1,300 annually, or $108 monthly. And then those home values that I give you are assessed values, not market values, but your assessed value on your home. So what does that 2% budget, the first story, where we do have control, what does it include? And I will turn to Mr. Van Nest for that.
Sure. So when we went through this budget, like we did last year, trying to fit it all in, we really wanted to make sure we're not reducing the programming for our students. We're trying not to reduce staffing, and we've succeeded in both of those things and stayed within the 2%. So we don't have any program reductions. We do have some additions, actually. We're going to add AP Chinese next year, which through an overage. So we did budget for that. We are they only get the digital resources only get more expensive, but we are a new 5-year contract for our science program at the elementary school, and a 5-year contract for the Sunday word study program that we have, the phonics program. We have built into there the curriculum writing for the new science standards, making sure that we are aligned to those 2025 next generation science standards, and for the new cursive handwriting standards that the state just required. And we maintain the professional development and responsibilities that we've always been doing for our staff here. Shall I continue, or is it? Okay. This also means we have no new staff. We have no new FTE increases, just that overage in Chinese, AP Chinese. It reflects all of our collectively bargained agreements, which is, I think, the salary increase for all staff on all the contracts is 3.5% in this contract year. So squeezing 3.5% into our 2% cap is tight. It's very tight. It includes the chief school administrator and the assistant chief school administrator salaries based on existing contracts, the continuation of what he described with the state health plan, which is where all the cost is coming, and we have a new Delta dental policy because it's a 5-year policy. Is that what it is, or 2? Okay, so a new policy for that.
So where do we go from here? An idea, our 2% increase on the tax levy is equal to about $1.1 million. The 3.5% increase on our collective bargaining agreements is about $900,000 to $1 million of that 1.1. So it's a difficult budget to reconcile, just to give some idea. So from here, Greg and I will be reaching out to Dr. Robinson to coordinate some smaller group conversations and trying to pair folks of, similar backgrounds and understanding of the budget process. State aid in this budget is assumed to be flat. The governor typically has the 4th Tuesday in February to provide a budget address. New governors are sometimes given latitude on that. And so on January 28th, S3219 was introduced. It has not been voted on, but it gives the governor until March 10th. The state then has 48 hours from the address to give us our state numbers. So we will patiently wait for that. And even though the governor has been given a 2-week grace period, grief period, Freudian slip there, we will not have a 2-week grace period on when it is due. So we could look at something like getting our state aid on the 10th and you folks voting on the 12th for the tentative budget that needs to go to the county by the 19th. So it's going to be a pretty close window there. And then we will have our public hearing in May. I believe it's scheduled for May 4th, where we will present the budget in much more detail to both the board and the general public. And that is all I have on the budget.
I have a quick question. I know a couple weeks ago, I received an email from the county about the timing with regards to the health benefits when they when they do the increase and they tell us it's basically like January, which is like off of our budget timing, and that's a conflict. And so I know that you did chime in, because part of it is like, well, what are the advocacy things that, like that we can do? And there are things that, sometimes I ask you for your expertise, but then I think that there's other points where it is our responsibility as elected officials to then go out and advocate at, the state level, whether it's through our association or, writing letters and things like that, to advocate for the way that this affects our budget, and that they really have to resolve something with the, state health benefits plan. And while we are in a fortunate position, based on the income levels in our community, we're all still struggling at various levels, and we want to be responsible with any of the decisions that we make. Additionally, as we hear in the news, many school districts around us are massively failing with their budgets in record numbers. And we are thankful that we are not currently in that position. However, I assume that based on enrollment at other, schools like Hackensack, we see Englewood, Montclair, Lakewood, East Orange, all of these other school districts, that this is going to continue to be a massive problem across the entire state. So are you able to just kind of like talk about that a little bit, like the advocacy that, like at the county level, and what kinds of things you see and like that kind of trend, just to...
So the Association of School Business Administrators has put out a paper on the health insurance situation. They have provided remedy. They have also provided a numerical opposition to the amount of money that Trenton says they are saving on the Chapter 44. So that is something that is going on, as we speak. As far as the advocacy from the board, letters to your local representatives and state senators would be great. I'd ask, please send them after we get state aid. But things of that nature, because it's not, what's going to be resolved is not going to be resolved in this particular fiscal period. It's more forward-looking. Like I said, in my opinion, there are some very clear ways to fixing the health insurance issue. Not to add, the municipal insurance fund is also in dire straits. So with two funds in dire straits, there are, real ways of creating reform. And I think we just need, as a board, from an advocacy perspective, is just making your legislatures aware of the issues and the pressures that it has on us at the local level and our community.
James, would it be also beneficial if the members of the community also email outside of the Board of Education?
Absolutely. I think what we're going to see is you're going to see town after town, as people begin to share their budgets for next year, that they're going to see numbers that are well in excess of 2% because of this, right? I mean, ours is what, is going to be 6.3 on the operating budget and 5.55, including debt service. Those are numbers that, people say, well, wait a minute, isn't there a 2% cap? Well, there is, but there's also, adjustments to it, and these are circumstances beyond our control. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of 6s, 7s, even 8s and 9s in some cases, especially in schools that are in the state health plan. If they're not in the state health plan, then they, it's hard to tell what their particular increases may be, because they're a limited risk pool, and depending upon their experience, they may not be where we are. The state plan today, as it currently exists, all of the good insured districts, right, are gone. Mm-hmm. And what's left are all of the districts with very high claims rates. So you have a ever-reducing risk pool, right? And that risk pool happens to have very large claims. And so that needs to be addressed. And how do we address that? And there are there are certainly suggestions out there that answer that.
Thank you.
Obviously, I have my ideas, but
Okay.
that's why I'm not in Trenton.
Thank you. Yeah, go for it.
Just one thing to advocate, because we talked about committees, and I think, just to speak, we have a committee that was able to take this information in at an early level, give some constructive feedback, various levels of input, where we were discussing what is possible to cut, when you make cuts, are we cutting services, or are we cutting dollars out of a budget? And hearing this brief tonight was excellent on bad news. This is bad news for every district. It's worse news for a lot of districts. You said there's a tale of two budgets, but there's I don't know what the future is going to look like, but we do have a path to get there through this. It became abundantly clear to me that real costs are increasing everywhere, and the idea that we can actually manage within a 2% increase year over year is hard to believe when I think of my own home budget. And then we have New Jersey law is written by exemption. Everything is illegal unless expressly permitted. So we're not allowed to exceed 2% unless expressly permitted. And then insurance is really just the major spotlight of the fiscal concern across the state or across the country. And we're feeling it here right now, and it's not much that there's nothing that we can do as a board other than what Mr. Canales really recommended, is know that this fight is ahead of us for all of us to really try to advocate and help the state know what problems to fix in the way that we're still able to function this year. So thanks for the committee on this one, because I think everybody on the board is going to have a better chance to hear this refined process and story, and we'll get to a manageable budget that we can feel comfortable passing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Questions?
yeah, I have
Go ahead.
question. I think you were suggesting all we can do is to reach out to our state representatives. I'm not clear, what do we reach out to them for? What do we ask? What is the request?
You want reform on the state health insurance fund, and the reforms in both design as well as participation.
As a result, the premium would be lower?
There are things like plan design that can lower premiums, yes.
Okay.
It's not something that is going to be easily understood. It would be unrealistic for me to expect that you would be able to understand this immediately. Honestly, it takes years in some respect if you're not either in education to understand this part or have experience as a board member like that, understanding the educational budget. But we'll make sure we get you up to speed with all of the things that you need to at least feel comfortable with whatever decision that you're going to make as a board member to the best of our ability. It is unfortunately complex, but I would say, thank you, Mr. Canales, for putting in a tremendous amount of hours, and also for the future hours that you're going to put in to having these smaller discussions for us to talk about, what are the options, and then, come back as a board and discuss that.
Please don't set an expectation for options. There are very few, as Mr. Corey will.
Yeah. No, I think, well, what you've said in the past is that really when we're talking about any options, we're not doing a lot of projects, for instance. We're not doing a lot of new programs. We're not doing we're basically at maintenance, and the biggest part of our budget is always going to be, personnel, health benefits, and, things like that, as well as the fact that we also are doing all of these rooftop units. We're also doing the repairs for the sinks and things like that, because those are maintenance items or end of life of our fields and things like that. So we're only seem to be doing, some of the necessary work. We already, did not put the project out to bid again for the press box, and those are things that wouldn't necessarily come out of the operating budget, but I think that we don't really have a lot of those other options. And in order for even personnel changes to make this significant of the thing, it would be, like a massive amount of people that you would have to be reducing in order to make a dent. And then that would only be this year. Then do you have to then have a massive personnel cut next year and the following year and the following year in order to maintain it? And that would not be sustainable. And it sounds like we're in a better position than many other school districts, and it's going to create a crisis across the state.
Yeah, Glen Rock is very lucky to have had a financial plan that has worked for many, many years, has added to the capital reserve, which allows for a lot of the projects that you mentioned to be paid for out of old dollars, not new dollars. And so, yeah, we are definitely lucky.
Okay. One of the things, I went to the school boards, like most of us went in October, and I went to the legislative session, and there were sitting senators and assembly people that were talking about like a variety of questions that they were being led through. And one of them was about the 2% cap, as well as the state health benefits plan and things like that. And so you were talking to people that are heading the Assembly Education Committee or the Senate Majority Leader and things like that. And one gentleman, he said that, well, the 2% cap, the way that we thought about it was that, like it wasn't going to include things like your rooftop units, that should be something that maybe is coming from, the state. Or if you're in a very, very old building, that those are things that you can't necessarily control on a budget level. Or if you need to replace furnaces and things like that, that there was a separate fund that would come from. And that most of the 2% would be, like our operating, our health benefits, our personnel, all of those things. And that if you had another project that you wanted to do with the school, that you would float the question through a referendum and do the referendum. And he said that was the way it was designed, that you ask for a referendum, and that's what the expectation is. But as we know, as public servants on this side, if we said that something like, oh, we need a referendum, that's like almost that is a bad word, like it sounds like a failure. So it's just interesting to hear from them. Their perspective is that they assume that people aren't going to be able to make this 2% cap and make everything happen within 2%. And that you should be going to the community and asking them proactively for a referendum. And I just thought that was really interesting to hear, not like positive, but really interesting to hear from them that we're supposed to magically just do everything within that 2% and then constantly float questions and ask for referendums from our community, because that would not go very well. Additionally, with regards to like their thoughts with the state health benefits plan, I mean, they don't really want to, we have almost like a single payer system here. And when you have one major company that's in charge of pretty much most health insurance across the state, they're not really incentivized to provide any changes. So I think that it's really hard for, like, I'm going to advocate, I'm going to do whatever I can as an elected official as well as just a public citizen to advocate for changes. But I think it's unfortunate that it doesn't seem like there's also an appetite to increase and open up the market to allow for a competition that would actually benefit the people. I don't see that, and I don't really see an appetite for legislation to change that, but that's just my opinion. Any other questions or concerns or anything? Go ahead.
Thank you for saying the word referendum 3 times. The ceiling didn't collapse when you said it. The floor didn't burst into flames. It's not a bad word. It's
I see
just
flames.
Well, I'm not looking at that. It is a tool. We don't have the budget to paint that. Stop. It is a tool that I think a board in support of a community and a community in support of a school district knows how to use. And what conversations like this, open dialogue about challenges, I think are the method of transparency that the community is going to need to hear and see to be able to get behind things. Tonight, Christine thanked the community for donating a couple $1,000s for equipment. Like that's not lip service. That's an incredibly valuable portion to our budget. That's $10,000 worth of wrestling singlets and a hockey program that couldn't have happened without that. I will say, if a wealthy benefactor wants to donate $1 million for a new press box, we'll probably have one next year. But short of that, we would need to float a referendum and to exceed our budget for something that, if the community should see that to be what we need to do, that's the path to do this. We built four new classrooms at Hamilton without doing that, which is really stretching the method by which we're constrained by. That's incredible. I'm sure there's other economic ways to do it, but it really comes down to public trust in the direction of the school district. And that's what the referendum as a tool can be for us. Thank you.
And I think also based on other funding that we had in prior years, you were able to, adjust your budgets, if I'm correct, in certain ways that don't exist anymore. So the
Yes.
amount of money that we're putting into capital reserve and all of that, it's smaller than what we were able to do in certain years, especially in the COVID years. And I think that what you're seeing across the state is that all of these places that were full, that are folding, are places that use the temporary funds to balance their budgets and are struggling.
Liquidity is a double-edged
yeah.
sword when you're borrowing from one pocket for the other. Yeah.
So,
Dr. Robinson, to your point, this very board used to budget contributions to the capital reserve. We can't do that any longer. We just can't afford to do so. And to Mr. Corey's point about $1 million donations, those also include pool and landscaping services. Just let me know, and we can get that all arranged for you.
but speaking of which, I think, well, you mentioned it, so I think that some of the things, like we talk about shared services and working with our town, our borough, it looks like those borough relations have been going really well. And I know you have a moment later or sometime soon to talk about that, but I think it ties in really well with the other things that we're doing to try and balance our budget and make things reduce costs for both ourselves as well as the borough as a whole. So are there any other questions with regards to this tentative budget? I know we're going to have our meetings, and I'll definitely find a way for us to meet.
One question that I have is, I read you said similar 30% or more increase is going to happen again in January 27, right? So assuming using the same method on your projection, let's say we have 2% tax increase this year. Same thing going to happen again next year?
It's been more.
Using the same projection, if nothing changes.
If you could turn on your mic.
Sorry, this budget covers the first 6 months of that second 30% increase. Just January 1 through June, right?
Right.
It does not include the other half of it.
Right.
But assuming, right, that it stays in that neighborhood, you've now built it into your budget, so your budget carries forward. So what I would say is that you're in a good position. It would be if the health fund doesn't go up 30%, or it stays flat as of January 1, 2028, then you could be, there is a way to get there within the 2%. That's
see.
just an unrealistic expectation based upon the historical trends of health insurance premiums.
I see. So you're not projecting another 30%
I
in
am-
January 2028? That's not.
No,
that's not-
but that wouldn't be in this budget. That would be in the
No.
next budget, yeah.
So this projection is based on that increase will be relatively a lot smaller than 30%?
Correct.
Okay.
And that actually goes, so the county actually sent a letter, which I forwarded to James, talking about advocating at the county level for the budget times to align, where, we're doing a budget based on the following, full year, almost like the school year. However, the state does a budget based on just the calendar year. So you don't actually know what's going to be approved for, next, 2027. So we're guessing. And in some places, people have guessed wrong, and then they have a budget shortfall in a period of time where they, we don't actually have the information. And so that's another form of advocacy that we need to have to be able to align it so that you can make an accurate budget, reflective of, the needs and things like that.
By way of example, to what Dr. Robinson was just saying, last year's budget had a 15% increase anticipated for January 1, 2026. It turned out to be 30. The delta resulted in $500,000 that we had to find in other places within our existing budget to fund that. And that's the advocacy that where we need help to maybe put the state fund on a fiscal year and not a calendar year.
I'm sort of glazing over, but bear with me. Did we get a number that we were eligible for from the state? I'm not even sure.
For what? For
Yeah.
state aid?
No,
State aid?
for the raise, for the increase, percentage? Yeah, the calculation.
For the insurance?
The cap?
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
To
your
go
que-
over cap.
Yes, budget software has been
I might have missed it, that's
issued.
why I'm asking.
And so we are able to, the $2.3 million is the calculation per the state's budget software.
You had percentages, you had the numbers, just for the benefit of all, can you just give us the high-level readout one last time?
Sure, I can. Don't want to misspeak. So our 2% cap levy is going up $1.1 million, and our state health insurance levy adjustment is $2.3 million, for a total of $3.4 million. That is an increase of 6.3% over last year. When you factor in debt service, which brings that percentage down because we were able to refinance the 2016 refunding bonds, brings it down to 5.5%. And then the tax rate, again, which is really not a function of the school district, but the tax assessor's office, we estimate to increase for the tax rate to be 2.38%. So the increases on the levy and then the tax rate.
So we're using 1.3 of our fund balance to reduce our 6.26% rate, to bring it down to 5.26.
No. Our $1.3 million fund balance is already baked in as part of a reconciling item. The reason why it reduces from the 6.3 to the 5.5 is the refunding of the debt service, which is not fund balance.
Okay, but we're taking down from our reserves to take down our 6.26% increase down to a 5.49%.
No, that's not accurate. It comes from 6.3 to 5.5 because of our debt service. Our debt service is a separate fund from the operating budget. What you're referencing is the $1.3 million that we balance all of our budgets and have balanced our budgets in the future with. That $1.2 million or $1.3 million in this budget is baked into the 6.3. Okay? That is $100,000 less than what it was last year, because we have been, as part of our goals, on a trajectory to bring that number to something reasonable. And we think that reasonable number is probably somewhere around $750,000. So we have quite a bit of ways to go. So each year we've been taking that $100,000 off in order to reduce our reliance on generating surplus. But the difference from the 6.3 to the 5.5 is all about debt service, which is not related to our fund balance contribution.
All right, any other, did you have a question? Okay. All right, thank you. All right, and if you're able to discuss the copier lease and then
Sure.
the snow removal?
Speaking of saving money, one of the areas where we were able to save some money this year was going out and trying to bring in a new leasing company and photocopy company. And so we had some preliminary discussions with a company that has a state contract, Atlantic Tomorrow. They came in, they did an assessment of our equipment, and so they were able to give us a deal whereby we would be saving $2,500 a month on our copiers, and all of our copiers, same number of copiers and same capability. They are also going to eat the remaining 2 years on our existing lease. So they're going to take back those copiers that we have, I believe, from Xerox, pay them off, and then enter a new deal with us where they would deliver for September 1, and we would then enter a new 5-year lease on that equipment. So we're excited about that. We don't get the full savings this year because obviously July and August will have to be at the old, but starting in September, we should be at the new. The lease agreement will be on the next agenda for approval by the board. And when we will begin, if approved, we will begin a transition plan.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions about that?
Just make sure I understand. This is talking about the paper copy machines? We're spending tens of thousands of dollars on paper copy machines still in 2026?
Yep.
Well, I'm just very surprised. Like,
Yeah.
what do we use that for?
It is used in every school building, whether that be for assessments or worksheets or whatever
Okay,
that
I'm
it needs.
I'm just very surprised.
To answer your question, in the admin areas, there are only about 4 of those copiers. They're mostly
Okay.
school-based.
And, did you have something?
When we sign the bills every month, I would want to say that the stack of bills, just to do the accounting and the cash reconciliation for a district in a month,
This
Joe, I
stack?
kid you not, is probably 8 inches thick.
Are you talking about this stack?
Yeah,
One, yeah.
that's 1 month of just the bills that you'll get to review as a trustee. So there's an incredible amount of paper to support.
But not,
over.
why not review the digital copy?
I have to
Like,
say-
I really enjoy that my kids get
In
paper
some
to
cases,
work on. You
and-
see that, it's like
I
a
see.
huge
Okay,
use in
yeah,
the
yeah.
elementary schools too.
In some cases, and Mr. Zittimer can correct me if I'm wrong, but statute actually requires paper copy.
That's right.
We're not escaping paper, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Snow removal?
Finally, some good news, right? I just wanted to discuss the snowstorm from 2 weeks ago. It was my first major snowfall here in Glen Rock, and also my first major snowfall as a business administrator, as well as the first snowfall for our Director of Buildings and Grounds. And so we didn't necessarily know where the pain points were. We found out what the pain points were real quick, and fortunately, we had in advance established an open dialogue with the municipality. We were included in all of the OEM meetings prior to the storm, and we had an avenue to seek help when we knew we needed help. And they were very quick to respond to our request, and we are incredibly appreciative of that. Very special thanks to the head of the DPW, the head of the OEM, the mayor, the fire chiefs, the police chief. It was just, it was a very well-executed plan, and I think we got through it in ways that other places did not. And it's just the beginning, I think, of much more open and much more collaborative efforts with the municipality. I know in anticipation of this past weekend storm, all of our parking lots were brined by the municipality, and we got a note, the night before, hey, we're going to be in your parking lots at 5 o'clock, we're going to brine you. And we're like, thank you. And so there's opportunities there. I think we're going to try and do a salt co-op bid together, maybe even a place to store salt, so that we don't run into some of the salt shortages that other municipalities have experienced. So really, it's just a personal thank you to the municipality for supporting us during the storm. And just a shout out to the DPW. They were on the clock working 29 straight hours. And when they went home at 11:30, and I was driving here to see how things were, and there were folks throwing snow into the street, and it's like, they're gone. That's going to turn to ice. Stop throwing snow into the street. So I think they would appreciate that as well. Once DPW is done, don't throw snow in the street.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you to the DPW, thank you to the borough leadership and everything. And so, I'm appreciative of you working well with them to get this done. So thank you so much, Mr. Canellis. On to liaison. So I posted the liaison assignments. I spoke with everyone. If you have any questions about the liaison assignments, do let me know. If you have anything to report out today, we'll do that. I'll just tell you about the Federated HSA meeting that I had on January 15th. For CPAC, they reported out that there was a meeting on January 20th for the pre-K and elementary, and their next pre-K elementary meeting is going to be on May 12th. For the middle school, high school, CPAC, their meetings were February 4th as well, and then May 6th will be their next one. They talked about in November, because this was the first meeting since we came back from the new year, that there was a virtual lecture on pathways for students with disabilities that was well received and very successful. They talked about teen mental health first aid, the wellness counselor at the high school level. There was a grade 12 fundraiser, and that they need about $20,000 in order for everyone to have a free prom. Our principal, high school principal, middle school, high school principal reported out that like how the monthly student and principal student advisory committee meetings were going, where the principal sits down with the student reps and discusses kind of generally things that they, like any pain points for the students, and they can ask questions. There was a Winter Olympics pep rally on February 6th. So the grade 6, 7, and 8 elective choices come soon, and kids usually get 1 to 2 of their top choices. They spoke a little bit about how that goes, and I thought that was interesting because, I have a elementary school student, so I'm not aware of these kinds of level of details, but it was nice to hear. The juniors do a post-secondary kickoff for college and alternate pathways, and that will include parents and students. They talked about the holiday concert that was on January 21st. Science Week was February 2nd through 6th. In the elementary schools, they did a switch over between Mandarin and Spanish. I know my own daughter was telling me that she, loved Mandarin. She's on Mandarin now, so she made sure to mention that to me. But that occurred on January 30th. On February 20th, you'll get some report cards out. I reported just that we did the RFA for the CSA search went out. We talked about the central naming committee and just introducing new board members. And that was really it. Any questions or comments or anything? I know many of you also have other, like HSA meetings that are within each of the elementary schools or middle school, high school. And so this is kind of like the collective one where everyone reports back up to the chief school administrator and all the building principals and things like that, but we also have individual ones that lead up to that. And that's it. Anybody have anything for liaison? Go ahead.
So for the Rec Advisory Board, just two updates I was able to get from the group and some others. One is that I want to say the Wild Memorial Park baseball field, they're considering to change that from a 60 to 90-foot pitching mound, which would allow for access for the middle school teams. That's a future idea to help coordinate between the town and the school district field. And another one was regarding use of, I think it was Hamilton's field between 4 and 5:30. I think the good thing for us to see is that people looking to use it are using the School Dude or whatever the new program is, so they're able to access information and communicate back. I assume all this communication will go through the AD or perhaps you as well, but these are the kinds of things that our town's working to do, and it sounds like we're figuring ways to work together, so that's the news.
Excellent. All right. Any other reports? Do you want to talk about naming committee? Naming committee? I know Dan's our rep, but I think you were able to attend the meeting, or do you have anything there?
Well, in Dan's absence, we had a meeting, the first meeting of the naming committee, where we sort of went over the process, looked at the new policy, made sure we were following it. Mr. Van Est was kind enough to lead the meeting, and I think we had a little homework. We're talking about possibly putting together some surveys to ask people's opinions and get some information. And once we have all that back, we'll be able to sort of have a better conversation about it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I don't have anything else under old business. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I have two things.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, one is, we were just talking about it. I'm going to speak from my heart here. So we were just talking about the subcommittees and that, and just as it's a new year, and bringing up the idea, I brought it up on email last year, but the location of our meetings. So we have, I think, the choice of where we meet, and based on, my aunt used to be on the board, Mary Jo Dervis, and she had mentioned that the meetings used to be held in the media center. So I just want to speak to the other board, you guys, and just let you know that I would love for us to consider having it there for 3 reasons. One is just acoustically, it's hard to hear in here. If we don't have the mic on, if we're not speaking directly in the mic, it's really hard to hear. Even in closed session, it's hard to hear each other. So just acoustically, I think there's a huge advantage. Logistically, I find that we are very far apart from each other. We're far apart from the public. You know, the media center is just a much more cozy environment. Whenever I look at other board meetings from other towns, I always see them held in media centers, AKA the library. So, you know, there's probably a reason. And then last is just, it's quite, you know, we all know it's very cold in this room, and there's a chance that the media center might have slightly warmer temperatures. So I brought this up on email last year. I just want to put it out there again. It is something to consider if we ever want to do it. Of course, we'd have to run by the administration to see logistically, but since I think it was held there in the past, it's probably logistically feasible. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, but
I could
just want to
give you-
plant a seed in your head.
I could give you the logistical answer is that we cannot. When the media center was redone, all of the broadcasting abilities from that room were removed and installed here. So currently, we do not have a way to video and broadcast our meetings in the media center. We would have to go out and purchase a similar type system that was installed here in order to do that.
So there's no speakers is in there?
It doesn't have any of the equipment that is needed by the gentleman to broadcast our meetings to broadcast. It doesn't have a speaker system, it doesn't have a mic system, it doesn't have a gateway out, so we would have to spend money in order to do that. So if the board wants to move their meetings to the media center, we could easily get quotes on what the cost would be to install such a system in the media center.
Okay. I was not aware. I just knew that it used to be there, so I didn't know the reason was, you know, that the acoustics weren't, the electronics weren't set up.
Okay.
No.
You said you had two things.
I had something else. Last meeting, Mr. Cohen brought up later school start times, and I wanted to revisit it. I've spent our last meeting was 5 weeks ago, so in that time, I've done some research on later school start times. I think we've all spoken about it before. There's a lot of support for it, and I just want to share my research on it that I, managed to look up. So, I think this is an important topic. I just even observing my own kids in the past week. My son, he has to report to sports at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. These kids don't get a chance to really sleep in and recover. My daughter, she plays sports till 9:30 at night, and she's 7th grade. So, they really, these kids really work hard during the week, and sleep has been proven to be really important. They've done so many studies in the last 12 years on sleep and how it helps you academically, socially, emotionally, mentally, and, just in every regard. I reached out to Ridgewood and spoke with them because I spoke with Sheila Brogan, who is the president of the school board there, and learned about their experience there. And it was a really interesting conversation. They actually spent so many years just researching it. The principal really advocated this whole initiative. Initially, there was a lot of doomsday thinking in Ridgewood. They thought $200,000 increase in bus costs. It ended up being zero. They thought, there'd be a lot of issues with it. It turned out to be none. Everybody has seemed to like it. So there was actually a 2-year study. I welcome you guys to all look at it. It's on their last board meeting in November is on YouTube. It was a 2-year study about the effects of what has happened since they put in later school start times. So they had a significant change in start times. They changed from 7:45 to 8:20. That's 35 minutes. I know here there's concern, okay, we can't do it. We have the teachers have a certain schedule already set up in their contracts. They kept the teachers the same schedule. They did not change it. What they did change was their school block time. So for like an 80-minute block went to 70 minutes. 55-minute block went to 50 minutes. They have this period of time, a chunk of time in the morning for that 35 minutes. The teachers are in school and they're available to students who might need extra help. But the period shortened. So the 2-year readout, it's a great presentation they have. They spoke to the effects, and the effects were really incredible. Their state scores have it's like a low-hanging fruit on how to, these kids can do better academically. Their state scores went up, their scores in class went up. Teachers uniformly reported out that the kids were way more alert in class and engaged and participating. The athletics reported the kids were just better sports. They actually won a record amount of sports in the last 2 years. Not that that's the goal, but it just is reflective that these kids are feeling physically better from more sleep. And the stat that I just thought was incredible was the amount of tardies. So there was about 8,000 tardies a year reported 2 years ago, and it reduced almost in half to like 4,600. So there's, these kids are coming in and showing up at school. And then, just on the legislative and political side, things are turning in our country. There is a law now in California and in Florida that high schools that get state aid cannot start before 8:30 a.m. So, and this is catching some steam in other states. So there's now legislation in 9 states: Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Texas, and New Jersey. There was legislation last year in the Assembly and the Congress for this move. And there's a number of schools in New Jersey that have recently changed. Ridgewood, Princeton, Pleasantville, Chatham, Westfield, South Orange, Maplewood, and it's in discussions with Bridgewater, Raritan. So, I just think it was, I know a lot of us are interested in this topic, and I would really hope that we can consider, and we can speak to it, and Mr. Cohen's not here, help here, but we can consider coming together and seeing if we can start just exploring what it takes to do this. And just exploring, because that's all. I know that there was concern last meeting that doing this, it would be interruptive to the superintendent's situation. But again, it's just exploring. And so that's just what I wanted to bring forth to share what's going on this front.
Florida actually repealed that later start time. Yeah, they repealed that
When did that happen?
recently.
Oh.
Last year. So, as most of you know who have been on the board, I am an advocate also for later start time, and it was brought up. I went to several meetings on it, or workshops on it, school boards a couple of years ago with 2 other board members that aren't on the board anymore. Chatham also has later start time, and that superintendent who's now in Princeton did a lot of research on it as well. And I do think it's something that we should look at, especially with the tardies. Kids are going to be in school. The biggest issue the districts had in it was the busing, and we are not a district that buses, so it's a little bit easier for us. I know did Ridgewood mention anything with, because the high school sports, the games could start at 4 o'clock. Was there any issues with that?
No, they've mentioned no issues with busing. It cost them $0 increase in busing. And sports starts, it was 10, 15 minutes later, but it didn't really have any effect. The kids just kind of hustled. The amount of time they had between the end of school and the start of sports was just reduced.
And also, when the Chatham superintendent did his presentation, they did a lot of other initiatives for the children's well-being, a lot of the same things that we have done here in Glen Rock, and the later start time was just one more piece of the puzzle in order to help our students be the best that they can be. So, I would be supportive of looking into this at any time that we want to decide it. It was spoken about and then it kind of was tabled. So it was something that I would support, is just to investigate it and get a feel for how it may or may not work in Glen Rock.
And I would add that the Ridgewood principal that initiated this, Jeff Nyhouse, he's been fielding calls from all schools. That's what Sheila Brogan, the president of the BOE, said. He's very open and happy to speak to anybody that wants to learn about their success story.
Can I piggyback on that? So I was in a meeting and I had a very brief encounter with the vice principal, I believe he was, of West Essex, who also started the later start time for their students. And it absolutely did nothing to their schedule as far as start and finish time. He said the teachers were thrilled with what was happening. What they did there was that they massaged the passing time periods. So if they were 5-minute passing, maybe they took a minute off of here, and then the lunchtime, you don't need the same amount of time before and after the passing time for lunch. I didn't get all of the specifics because it was in passing in my meeting with him, and I just, hearing his enthusiasm about it and how, getting full support from the staff, teachers, and administrators. They were thrilled with the outcome. The tardy was a big, big thing, that it really cut it down to almost nothing, he said, for them. And as a VP, they deal with a lot of the tardies. So I would be very happy to be part of also looking further into that and digging in. I think that this is, at the end of the day, I know that I had heard somewhere that it was, a new superintendent coming in. But at the end of the day, this is a board decision. Do we want to go in this direction or not? And I think if we start the legwork to find out, if we ask the administration to investigate or however it should work, I think that we might be pleasantly surprised. It doesn't have to happen tomorrow. It doesn't have to happen this school year. But I think starting to investigate is only, to our benefit.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be in touch. I'll be in touch with you. I'll let you know. All right. Anything else? All right. So we're on to our next meeting date is February 23rd. And we're going to open up our second public comments at 9:47. Please state your name and your address, and then you have 3 minutes, and then you'll hear a beep go off. I know Ms. Scarpelli already knows.
Hi, Sharon Scarpelli, 687 Doremus Avenue. I actually wasn't going to make any comments, but I want to thank you for bringing up the later start time. When I was on the board, along with another board member that's no longer on the board, and I was at that meeting with Karen. We were asking for this then, and that was 2 years ago. It seemed pretty seamless. Now, I know there's always bumps in the road, but this is something this district can do. Eliminating the issue with the buses is huge. We have a middle school and a high school in the same building. You can start them both at the same time, make them both start later. There's no reason that we can't look into this and get this done for our kids. This is for our kids. Secondly, moving on to the budget, I don't know if I misheard, but I thought you had thrown out a $3.2 million increase in the health insurance, and 2.3 of it will be covered in the adjustment. I'm just curious where the other 900,000 falls. If you can't answer that, I get it, but I just, listening here, I just know there's a $900,000 shortfall somewhere, plus what you said, there's a 1.1 million in the 2%, so if it's within the 2%, okay, so that's where it's being captured.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. So best of luck with the budget. It's not going to be easy. We knew this years ago, this was going to happen. It's going to be difficult next year. I know we're increasing that 2% cap for the futures budgets by having this big increase, but this is a huge increase. And it was nice to hear that there was some kind of budget meetings with board members in a smaller setting to discuss this. You guys are going to have to make some hard decisions, and we all know where the big dollars fall. So best of luck, and get the kids in school later.
Thank you.
Rob Morrissey, 560 Ackerman Ave. I'm here tonight as a parent of 3 Glen Rock students, including my son Wyatt, who was recently suspended. Let me be clear from the start, I'm not here asking for empathy, sympathy, or understanding. I'm here asking for oversight, which is the responsibility of the board. In my meeting with the acting superintendent, Mr. Van Nest, he admitted that he had watched the video evidence related to this incident only twice. The video, taken out of context and never supplemented by interviews, statements, or broader investigation, appears to be the only evidence relied upon by the administration, and yet this single piece of evidence resulted in 27 student suspensions. That alone should concern you. Even more troubling, during the same meeting, Mr. Van Nest admitted that he did not know anything about my son. Not his history, not his character, not his record as a student. This is not just disappointing, it signals an alarming lack of diligence in a situation that affects a child's disciplinary record and well-being. We were also informed that the assistant principal who issued the disciplinary letter will not meet with us. We were told the matter is considered closed by the administration. I disagree. And more importantly, you should be troubled by this position. When administrators refuse dialogue, rely on minimal review of evidence, and fail to understand the students they are disciplining, this is not leadership. It's a process failure. And it raises serious questions about whether those entrusted with authority are equipped to handle complex, high-stakes situations involving students. Since the last time we addressed this board, I have written to you twice and met directly with Mr. Van Nest, yet nothing has changed. No review, no reconsideration, no accountability. The frustration we feel as parents and as taxpayers funding this district is at an all-time high. You are the governing body. The administration reports to you. We're not asking you to reverse the suspension tonight. I'm asking you to do your job, to question how decisions are made, how evidence is evaluated, and how students are treated. It will not take long to uncover the administration's processes are simply inadequate. Finally, I understand that the board may be in the process of hiring a superintendent. In times of challenge, schools need leaders, people who step forward, take responsibility, and engage with families, not individuals who hide behind legal language and closed doors. This moment matters, not just for my son, but for every family in this community. The standard you tolerate is the standard you endorse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. To start, are you able to, Mr. Canellis, just clarify the budget question?
Yes. The almost $800,000, $900,000 difference between the tax adjustment and the actual increase was absorbed in the 2% cap levy increase.
All right, just to, address, I know we've had a few exchanges, but since you mentioned in public comment, so part of the process, when your request, or not even just your request, the other requests that came through, I had those meetings with our chief school administrator to ask about the process, and I also had that meeting with our legal counsel with regards to the process. I had, not even just that, but we had some small discussion, with our prior meeting, and then even in this meeting again, we did an after-action review and discussed whether or not policy was followed and things like that. We had our legal counsel here with us to do that kind of discussion. And so it's hard to, have back and forth and say what we do and don't do when we have certain internal, review things that we're really unable to tell you to the level of the satisfaction that you may want, or even if I wasn't a board member and I was just sitting on the other side and wanting to know information about a question that I had and I felt like I wasn't getting a satisfactory response. But yes, our process is to ask those questions and then, push it to the level that we're able to, and then it follows into what I had sent you in the email, that anything outside of that is the responsibility through the Commissioner of Education, which I know is an option that's available to you. But I just wanted to address that. All right. So seeing no additional public comments at 9:55, well, I should have done that first, but we'll just say officially 9:55, we close public comments. And I just need a motion to adjourn. Ms. Calvez, seconded by Mr. Hayward, thirded by Mr. Stevenson, fourth by, all right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? All right, we are adjourned.